up until this Boston series, really, the Blue Jays made very few mistakes. They played very well. They had an inordinate number of away games and still managed to put up a pretty good record. Not Tampa Bay type of numbers, but still they were, pretty good. And now they've kind of fallen on hard times, and mostly because of their pitching staff, I guess. Griff, do you think?
I think that there's a combination of things. You mentioned that it's early in the season. I think the perception among fans and Canadian baseball fans, Canadian sports fans are the most sharing on social media anywhere. So as soon as you lose 3 in a row, 4 in a row, they go crazy. They overreact. I think a big part of that is playing in the American League East, where all 5 teams are above 500. The bottom line is that the Blue Jays, even with the 4 losses to the Red Sox, are on pace for 94 wins, which is 2 more than they had in the last 2 seasons. But yeah, the bullpen once retired 36 hitters in a row during the last homestand to start the 5 games of the last homestand. So there is potential there, but they just have to find the right roles. And as you said, Bob, it's still early.
Yeah. Perk, what's your assessment?
This is a very, very strange season, I think, now. Baseball's become like society. There's very, very rich and there's very, very poor. There are so many really terrible teams out there. And the Jays have had a great schedule so far. They've kicked the snot out of bad teams, out of Kansas City, out of Detroit, out of the White Sox. I mean, who are way worse than anybody thought they'd be. I don't think the Angels are great either. They're a 2-man team. The Cardinals are a 2-man team. They're not, and the Jays are like 10-3 against these horrible teams, and against 500 or below 500 against the teams we figure would be decent. Seattle and Houston, Yankees. I don't know if you think Boston's good or not, but I think this is the way it's going to be all season. They're going to kick the crap out of these terrible teams, and you try to break even against the good teams, and that puts you in the playoffs. And then from there, it's a crapshoot. I think they're right on schedule for this. They're not as good as they look when they're winning big against these crummy teams. They're not as bad as they look when they play. I mean, they looked horrible last night, but that's a one-off kind of game.
Guys, every major pro sport seems to have more of a separation these years than ever. The bad teams are tanking, and they can say why they're tanking, but a lot of it has to do with payroll. And I'm not so sure it's draft pick unless it's Connor Bedard, but it's in every sport. And Perky's right. I mean, there's a lot of bad teams, but you look at Tampa Bay's starting schedule, they got off to a jackrabbit start because they had that sort of a schedule.
Right.
But
Baltimore too. Baltimore's had an easy schedule.
And the bottom line is the AL East is just now beginning to play intramural games, and that'll sort of level off the division, because right now they're kicking the snot out of everybody. There were 71-32 outside the division at the beginning of this series. But go ahead.
And the difference for the Jays this year is that with this new schedule, you take 20 games away from the AL East. I don't care whether it's Baltimore, New York, Boston, whatever. You get rid of them, and now you're playing more games against Colorado and these pathetic teams out there that I mean, they're mail-in games basically. You're going to win 2 out of 3 just by showing up. So it's I think they go way over their under-over win total, because that was based on 19 against the Red Sox, 19 against the Yankees, 19 against Tampa, blah blah blah. Well, that isn't going to happen anymore. So it's the wins are a whole lot easier to come by, and I think look at the money involved in sports. Look what these franchises are selling for. If you're the Oakland A's, why should you spend money on players? Because your franchise is worth billions of dollars. You take in multi-millions in gate equalization, or what do they call it, competitive balance or whatever they call it. which, by the way, the Jays are going to pay for the first time ever this year. I mean, there's no incentive for terrible teams to get better.
That's always been the story in Kansas City and Pittsburgh, right? That was what they lived on for the last decade.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the Pirates are off to a great start.
Good
you
for
know,
them.
Now,
Yeah.
that doesn't mean anything. They may still win 60,
Yeah.
and finish last. But,
Yeah,
they
sure.
played well.
But Rich, I got to ask you, you talked about on pace for 94. And after the two 91, 92 game win seasons, shouldn't the expectation that this team should be closer to 100 wins? And is it fair to think that they should be close to 100 wins, or is this the plateau that this team lives in?
No, there's no doubt they should be close to 100 wins, but Perky knows very well that this team has a history of not stepping on anyone's throat. They're happy winning series, and that they say that all the time. Winning a series is what we're looking for. Winning 2 out of 3, and they're 1-3 this year with a chance to sweep a series, and they were 6-12 last year with a chance to sweep a series. And it's like they roll out, they give their guys their load management days. And they don't go for the jugular. And to your point, John, yes, they should be closer to 100 wins, just rolling out of bed in the morning, but they haven't. And there's a certain ability to reach that level. Once you reach that plateau, I think you find it easier to stay there. The Jays haven't reached it in a long time.
But the way you talked about that, is that an intentional thing from the front office, from the analytics department, or is this the human aspect of baseball?
I think the analytics department, whatever you think of Charlie Montoyo as a manager, I think that he bucked the analytics department, being an old school and being a minority, and all sorts of reasons for it. And John Schneider is towing the line, and the result is that guys are getting days off. The bullpen, you can only work 2 days in a row, and then you have to sit maybe 2 days. I think that, I think analytics is a part of putting a cap on the win totals.
Wow.
Are you analytics guys? Like, do you believe in it?
Not me.
I mean, we see a different outfield like almost every night with the Blue Jays. You never know who's going to play. And, your center fielder is Kiermaier, but what does Kiermaier play? 2 out of 3 at most.
Well, looking back at the streak they had with the bullpen, they pitched 15 no-hit innings in a row to start that last homestand. And I do believe that analytics had something to do with it. They're looking for 3, because you've got to face a minimum 3 batters coming out of the bullpen unless you finish off an inning. But I think they're looking for windows where guys match up really well. And without analytics, it's kind of hard to do that, like in the dugout. So they get all this information, that window shows up, they bring in Tim Meza. And I think that after 5 days of perfect baseball, once they left that window, once they had to start resting guys and their other policy of not having guys pitch more than 2 days in a row, that messes with what they're trying to do. And the result is what we've seen starting on Sunday against the Mariners and going through the first few games of the Red Sox series. So like, analytics does have a place in strategizing, but I think that, like Perky, I'm not a big fan at all.
Well, I'm not. I can tell you that for sure.
There are some stats that are now prevalent that I don't even know what they mean. The small c, whatever, and it's like, what? And the game survived and thrived for many, many years before this stuff started.
We just sound like 4 old men now. That's all.
Yeah, no doubt.
Well, sure we do. But that doesn't make us wrong, though, does it?
A glacier
Arbitrarily?
will sweep over us and we'll be done.
I mean, we grew up watching an era of baseball and a way of doing things that, obviously we bought into, and now it's something completely different. And I don't buy into this new philosophy. I don't see why a center fielder has to rest 2 out of every 3 days. I just don't.